The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor of our penthouse, golden liquid spreading like guilt across the white tiles. My hand trembled, not from shock, but from the effort of maintaining my performance. "I'm so sorry, Nate," I whispered, watching my fiancé scramble to clean up the mess. I'm so clumsy lately. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Nathan looked up from where he knelt, his expression flickering between annoyance and what he probably thought was concern. "It's fine, Maya. You've been stressed with the wedding planning. Maybe you should lie down." Stressed. That's what he called it, as if my anxiety stemmed from choosing between orchids and roses, rather than discovering that my fiancé of 3 years had been conducting a separate courtship behind my back, with my business partner no less. "Actually," I said, forcing brightness into my voice, "I was thinking we could go over the seating chart tonight. I made some changes." Nathan's phone buzzed on the counter. I watched his eyes dart to it, that familiar hunger flickering across his face before he masked it. "Sure, babe. Just give me 5 minutes. Quick work call." He disappeared into his office, the room I wasn't supposed to enter without knocking, the sanctuary where he's spent increasing hours lately. I listened to his muffled voice, catching fragments through the door. "Tomorrow night. I promise." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. Of course I'm sure." I allowed myself a small smile as I bent to pick up the larger shards of glass. In his office, Nathan had no idea that every word was being recorded by the device I'd had installed 3 weeks ago. The same 3 weeks since I'd started noticing the inconsistencies, the late-night client calls, the mysterious jewelry charge on our shared credit card, jewelry I'd never received, the way Vanessa, my trusted business partner at Meridian Financial Consulting, suddenly couldn't meet my eyes during meetings. But the real revelation had come 2 days ago. I'd been working late at our office, finishing a proposal for a major client. Vanessa had left hours earlier, citing a migraine. I'd thought nothing of it until I needed a file from her desk and saw the edge of a reservation confirmation peeking from beneath her keyboard. The Grandview Hotel, Presidential Suite. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. The same hotel where Nathan had told me he'd be attending a bachelor party for his college roommate. The same night. I'd stood there, holding that paper, feeling the careful architecture of my life begin to crack. But unlike most people who discover betrayal, I didn't crumble. I didn't cry. Instead, I did what I'd been trained to do through years of forensic financial analysis. I investigated. By the end of that night, I'd uncovered something far more interesting than a simple affair. Vanessa Cho, my business partner of 5 years, the woman I'd helped build Meridian Financial from a 2-person startup into a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, had been systematically embezzling from our corporate clients. Not large amounts. She was far too clever for that. Small transfers, carefully hidden in complex financial structures spread across dozens of accounts. But what made my blood run cold wasn't just the theft. It was the pattern. Every company she'd stolen from was one I'd brought to our firm. My relationships, my reputation, my trust, all weaponized for her personal gain. And the trail, if anyone looked, would point directly to me as the primary account manager. I was being set up. The office door opened and Nathan emerged, his smile back in place. "Sorry about that. Client emergency. You know how it is." "I do," I replied softly, watching him pour himself a scotch. "I absolutely do." What Nathan didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that my father had spent 30 years as a federal prosecutor specializing in financial crimes before his retirement. The dinner conversations of my childhood hadn't been about sports or television, but about wire fraud, RICO statutes, and the beautiful complexity of following money trails. When I'd discovered Vanessa's scheme, my first call hadn't been to a lawyer. It had been to my father's former colleague, Special Agent Marcus Chen at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. "Maya," Nathan settled beside me on the couch, scotch in hand. "You seem distracted lately. Is everything okay with the business?" I turned to him, arranging my features into concern. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. It's about Vanessa." His body tensioned imperceptibly. "What about her?" "She's been acting strange, secretive. I'm worried she might be—" I paused, letting uncertainty color my voice. "I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but some of the accounts don't quite add up." Nathan's expression shifted through several emotions: alarm, calculation, and finally, false reassurance. "I'm sure it's nothing. Vanessa's always been thorough. Maybe you're just stressed about the wedding. Speaking of which, I need to finalize numbers for the bachelor party. Jim's been asking." Jim? The college roommate whose bachelor party was supposedly tomorrow night. The same Jim who, according to his very public social media presence, had gotten married 6 months ago in Cabo. "Of course," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I trust your judgment." The lie tasted bitter, but necessary, because tomorrow night, while Nathan thought he was attending a non-existent bachelor party, he would actually be at the Grandview Hotel. And I would be there too, though not in the way he expected. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Chen. "Equipment ready, team briefed. Are you certain you want to proceed with Plan B?" Plan B. The plan that would expose not just Vanessa's crimes, but Nathan's, complicity in them. Because in my weeks of investigation, I'd discovered something else. Nathan wasn't just cheating on me, he was helping Vanessa. His work calls were consultations on how to hide the money trails. His financial background, the one he'd downplayed when we met, was being used to create shell corporations and offshore accounts. He wasn't just betraying me romantically. He was an active participant in fraud that could destroy everything I'd built. The evidence was damning. Email chains discussing our retirement fund, text messages about one more big transfer, and most devastatingly, a recorded phone call where Nathan discussed proposing to Vanessa once they'd moved enough money to disappear properly. Proposing to her, while still engaged to me. "I was thinking," Nathan said, interrupting my thoughts. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding. Just a few months. Give us time to really make sure everything's perfect." I lifted my head to look at him, seeing the man I'd thought I loved, the man I'd planned to marry, the man who was currently trying to buy time to run away with his mistress and my stolen money. "Postpone?" I repeated carefully. "Just to December. Or maybe spring. Spring weddings are beautiful, right?" His smile was warm, practiced, perfect. The same smile that had won me over 3 years ago at a charity gala when he'd seemed so different from the corporate sharks I usually met. Genuine, kind, safe. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "It's a big decision." That night, after Nathan fell asleep, I crept into his office. The recordings from today were automatically uploaded to my secure cloud storage, backed up on 3 separate servers. Agent Chen had been thorough in setting up my documentation system. I pulled up the financial analysis I'd been compiling. Vanessa had stolen approximately $4.7 million over 2 years from our clients. The money had been funneled through 15 different shell companies, eventually landing in accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Nathan's fingerprints were all over the structure, elegant, complex, and almost impossible to trace. Almost. Because they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. My phone lit up with another message, this time from Vanessa. Breakfast meeting tomorrow? Need to discuss the Henderson account. The Henderson account. Our largest client, a tech startup preparing for an IPO. The same company where Vanessa had recently suggested some innovative financial restructuring. The same restructuring that would have given her access to $2 million in pre-IPO funds. I typed back, "Can't tomorrow, family thing, Friday?" Her response was immediate. "Friday works. Enjoy your family time." Family time. She knew Nathan and I had no family plans tomorrow, which meant she knew he was lying to me about the bachelor party, which meant she was in on the deception, probably laughing about it. The rage that swept through me was cold and clarifying. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about two people who thought they could destroy my life, my business, and my reputation while playing me for a fool. I opened my laptop and pulled up the file Agent Chen had sent over. The United States versus Vanessa Cho and Nathan Pierce, preliminary case file. Reading through the charges, wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit theft, I felt something shift inside me. This was no longer about a broken heart or a failed relationship. This was about justice. My phone rang, startling me. Agent Chen's name flashed on the screen. "Can't sleep?" His voice was knowing when I answered. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Just reviewing the timeline," I said softly, glancing toward the bedroom where Nathan slept. "I want to make sure we have everything." "We do. But Maya, I need to ask you again, are you sure you want to be there tomorrow night? You don't have to witness this. We can handle the arrest without you present." I thought about that, about taking the easy way, letting the FBI handle everything while I stayed home, safe and removed from the confrontation, about maintaining my dignity and protecting myself from the pain of watching Nathan's betrayal made manifest. "I need to be there," I said finally. "I need to see his face when he realizes what he's done. What they've both done." Agent Chen was quiet for a moment. "All right, but we do this exactly by the book. You stay with Agent Morrison at all times, you don't engage with the suspects, and you leave when we tell you to leave. Understood?" "Understood." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of Nathan's office, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal. On his desk was a photo from our engagement party, both of us smiling, champagne glasses raised, the future looking bright and uncomplicated. I picked up the photo, studying my own face. That woman had been naive, trusting. She'd believed in love and partnership and building a life together. Tomorrow night would mark the death of that woman and the birth of someone new. Someone who understood that trust was a commodity that could be weaponized. Someone who knew that the best revenge wasn't just about exposing betrayal, it was about dismantling it so completely that recovery became impossible. I placed the photo face down on the desk and returned to bed, sliding in beside Nathan. He stirred, reaching for me in his sleep, and I let him pull me close. One last time, I allowed myself to feel the warmth of his body, the rhythm of his breathing, the fiction of safety. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, I could still pretend we were just an ordinary couple, planning an ordinary future, untouched by lies and theft and the cold machinery of federal justice. Tonight, I could still be the Maya who didn't know what waited in the presidential suite at the Hawaii Grandview Hotel. Tomorrow, I would be someone else entirely. The next morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that seemed to mock the darkness of what lay ahead. I woke to find Nathan already dressed, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Not his usual work attire, I noted, but the Tom Ford suit he saved for special occasions. "Big day?" I asked, stretching with practiced casualness. He startled slightly, not realizing I was awake. "Just the bachelor party tonight. Thought I'd look decent for Jim's send-off." "Jim's already married," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Nathan's hands stilled on his tie. "What?" "Nothing." I backtracked smoothly, sitting up in bed. "I meant, Jim's already as good as married to his job. That's what you always say about him, right?" The tension in his shoulders eased. "Right. Yeah. The guy's a workaholic." He finished with his tie and turned to me, bending down to kiss my forehead. "I'll probably be late. Don't wait up." "Nathan?" I called as he reached the bedroom door. He turned back, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt? Regret? Or simply the anticipation of his evening ahead? "I love you," I said. The words hung in the air between us, and I watched him wrestle with them, watched him arrange his features into an expression of warmth. "Love you too, Maya. Always." The door closed behind him, and I counted to 60 before pulling out my phone. A text to Agent Chen. "He's on the move. Evening attire. He's committed." The response came immediately. "Good. Remember, 8 p.m., presidential suite. Stay with Morrison." I had 12 hours to prepare for the end of my old life. The office felt different when I arrived that morning. Or perhaps I was different, seeing it through new eyes. Meridian Financial occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise with glass walls overlooking the city. Vanessa and I had signed the lease 5 years ago, two young women with more ambition than capital, determined to prove ourselves in a male-dominated industry. We'd done it too, built something real, something valuable, and she'd been stealing from it the entire time. "Maya," Vanessa's voice rang out as I entered. She stood by the coffee machine, perfectly put together in a cream Chanel suit, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. "You're early. I thought you had a family thing today." "Tonight," I corrected, pouring myself coffee. "This afternoon is clear." She smiled, that warm, sisterly smile I'd trusted for 5 years. "Good. Because we need to go over the Henderson restructuring before Friday. I've got the preliminary numbers ready." The Henderson restructuring, the final theft, the big score before she and Nathan disappeared. "Actually," I said carefully, "I've been thinking about that. Maybe we should run it past our legal team first, just to be safe?" Vanessa's smile didn't waver, but something shifted behind her eyes. "That seems unnecessary. It's a standard restructuring. We've done dozens like it." "I know, but with the IPO coming up, I'd feel better having extra eyes on it. Wouldn't want any complications. Maya." Her voice took on a patient, almost condescending tone. "You're being paranoid again. This is what we do. This is what we're good at. Trust the process." Trust. The word landed between us like a stone in still water. "You're right," I conceded, watching her relax. "I'm probably just stressed about the wedding. How is the wedding planning going?" She leaned against the counter, coffee in hand, the picture of casual interest. "Nathan must be getting excited." "He is. Although..." I paused, as if uncertain whether to continue. "He wants to postpone, just a few months." Vanessa's expression flickered. Surprise, then something darker, then back to concern. "Postpone? Why?" "He says to make everything perfect, but I wonder if he's having doubts." I let vulnerability creep into my voice. Do you think he's having doubts, Vanessa? She set down her coffee and came to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. The same hand that had signed fraudulent transfer documents. The same hand that had, presumably, touched my fiancé in ways I didn't want to imagine. Nathan loves you, she said firmly. Anyone can see that. He's probably just overwhelmed with work. You know how men are. They panic about commitment even when they're sure. The irony was exquisite. Here she stood, offering me relationship advice about the man she was planning to run away with, using words meant to reassure me while planning my professional destruction. You're probably right, I said softly. Thank you, Vanessa. I don't know what I'd do without you. That's what partners are for, she replied, squeezing my shoulder. We look out for each other. I spent the rest of the day in a strange fog of normalcy, answered emails, reviewed client portfolios, had lunch with a potential new client. All the ordinary rhythms of my professional life, performed with the knowledge that by this time tomorrow, everything would be different. At 4 p.m., I excused myself early, citing a headache. Vanessa barely looked up from her computer, already deep in whatever scheme she was perfecting. Feel better, she called as I left. Try to relax tonight. Maybe a bath? Some wine? Good idea, I replied. I'll do that. Instead, I went home and prepared for war. The black dress I'd chosen was elegant but severe, appropriate for witnessing an arrest. I did my makeup carefully, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. This woman looked harder than the Maya of yesterday, more certain, more dangerous. At 6 p.m., Agent Morrison arrived at my apartment building. She was in her late 30s, with sharp eyes and an efficient manner that I found oddly comforting. Ready? She asked when I met her in the lobby. Yes. Remember the rules. You observe, you don't engage. If things get volatile, you leave immediately. Understood? Understood. The drive to the Grandview Hotel took 20 minutes through rush hour traffic. Agent Morrison briefed me on the operation as we drove. We've had the presidential suite under surveillance since yesterday. Audio and video. Your fiancé made a reservation for 8 p.m. under a fake name, Michael Chen. Your business partner checked in this afternoon at 3 p.m. She's been in the suite since then, presumably preparing for his arrival. Preparing how? I asked, then immediately wished I hadn't. Agent Morrison glanced at me sympathetically. Romantically. Champagne, roses, the works. I'm sorry, Maya. I stared out the window, watching the city slide past. Don't be. I need to see it. I need to know exactly what they're capable of. We pulled up to the Grandview at 7:45 p.m. The hotel was exactly as I remembered. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, the kind of calculated luxury that spoke of old money and new pretensions. Nathan and I had stayed here once, for our first anniversary. I'd thought it was romantic then. Agent Morrison led me through a service entrance to a room 3 doors down from the presidential suite. Inside, 4 other agents monitored equipment, their faces illuminated by the glow of multiple screens. Ms. Reeves, Agent Chen greeted me, standing. Thank you for your cooperation in this operation. When will he arrive? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Any minute now. Would you like to see the setup? He gestured to the main monitor, which showed a split-screen view of the presidential suite. I could see Vanessa moving through the rooms, adjusting flowers, checking her reflection in a mirror. She wore a red dress I'd never seen before, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked happy, excited, in love. Audio? I asked. Agent Chen nodded to another agent, who adjusted something on the console. Suddenly, I could hear Vanessa humming as she moved through the suite, the clink of champagne glasses, the whisper of fabric as she smoothed her dress. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Running a few minutes late. Traffic is insane. Love you." I showed it to Agent Chen without comment. "He's 3 blocks away," another agent reported, tracking his phone signal. 2 minutes out. "Ms. Reeves," Agent Morrison touched my elbow gently. "Last chance. You don't have to watch this." But I did. I needed to see the moment when Nathan walked into that suite, needed to see his face when he saw Vanessa, needed to understand, completely and finally, that the man I'd planned to marry was capable of this level of deception. "I'm staying," I said. The next 90 seconds passed in suspended animation. On the monitor, Vanessa checked her phone, smiled at whatever message she'd received, and moved to stand near the suite's entrance. She adjusted her dress one final time, took a deep breath, and composed her features into an expression of eager anticipation. A knock at the door. Vanessa opened it, and there was Nathan, holding a bouquet of white roses. "My favorite flowers," I noted with bitter irony. He stepped inside, and she threw her arms around him, kissing him with an intensity that made me look away for a moment. When I forced my eyes back to the screen, they were pulling apart, Nathan laughing at something she'd said. He handed her the flowers, and she placed them on a nearby table before pulling him deeper into the suite. "Can't believe we're finally doing this," Vanessa's voice came through the speakers, breathy with excitement. "I've been going crazy all day." "Me too," Nathan replied. "I almost slipped up with Maya this morning. She asked about the bachelor party, and I nearly forgot which lie I'd told her." They both laughed. In the monitoring room, I felt Agent Morrison's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. On screen, Nathan and Vanessa settled onto the suite's plush sofa, champagne glasses in hand. "To us," Vanessa toasted. "To new beginnings." "To us," Nathan echoed. "And to Maya, for being so wonderfully, predictably naive." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around me, I felt the agents shift uncomfortably, their professional detachment cracking in the face of such casual cruelty. "She really doesn't suspect anything?" Vanessa asked, curling into Nathan's side. "Not a thing. She's too busy worrying about flower arrangements and seating charts to notice we're stealing her life." He took a long drink of champagne. "God, I almost feel bad sometimes. She tries so hard to be good at everything." "Please," Vanessa scoffed. "She's insufferable with her perfection." "Let's double-check the numbers, Vanessa. Let's get legal to review this, Vanessa." As if I haven't been running circles around her for years. "How much longer until we can move the final transfer?" Nathan asked. "Henderson IPO closes in 2 weeks. Once that money hits our account, we process the restructuring, skim our final $2 million, and we're done. By the time anyone notices, we'll be on a beach in Bali." "And Maya?" "Maya gets left holding the bag. All the documentation points to her as the primary account manager. She signed off on everything. When the clients realize what happened, they'll come after her, not us." Nathan nodded slowly, swirling his champagne. "She'll be destroyed. Professionally, financially, maybe even criminally. That's her problem," Vanessa said coldly. She should have been more careful about who she trusted. The room fell silent except for their continued conversation, now drifting to logistics and timelines. I stood frozen, watching the two people I'd loved most in the world discuss my destruction as casually as if they were planning a weekend trip. Agent Chen cleared his throat. "Ms. Reeves, we have everything we need. The team is preparing to move in. I think you should—" "Wait," I interrupted. "There's supposed to be a proposal, isn't there? Vanessa told her mother he was going to propose tonight." Agent Morrison looked at me sharply. How do you— I've been monitoring more than just the financial crimes, I said quietly. I needed to know everything. On screen, Nathan was standing up, reaching into his jacket pocket. My heart stopped as he pulled out a small velvet box, the same jeweler's box I'd seen charged to our credit card 3 weeks ago. "Vanessa," he said, and his voice held genuine emotion. "These past 2 years with you have been the best of my life. You're brilliant, beautiful, and brave enough to take what you deserve. I know we've got a few more weeks of playing pretend, but I don't want to wait any longer to ask you this." He dropped to one knee, and Vanessa's hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "Will you marry me?" The word yes was barely out of her mouth before he was sliding the ring onto her finger, a princess-cut diamond that must have cost $30,000, paid for with our joint account, the account I'd been funding while he planned to leave me. They kissed again, and I turned away from the monitor, unable to watch anymore. "That's enough," Agent Chen said quietly into his radio. "All units, move in." The operation unfolded with military precision. On screen, I watched the suite door burst open, FBI agents flooding into the room with weapons drawn. "FBI, put your hands up, now!" Nathan and Vanessa sprang apart, confusion giving way to terror as they realized what was happening. Vanessa's scream was high and piercing. Nathan just stood frozen, the color draining from his face. "Nathan Pierce, Vanessa Cho, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit theft." I watched as they were separated, handcuffed, read their rights, watched Nathan's eyes dart around the room, calculating, trying to understand. Watched Vanessa collapse into sobs, her new engagement ring glinting mockingly on her finger. "Ms. Reeves," Agent Morrison said gently, "we're going to take you down there now. Are you ready?" Was I ready? Ready to face them, to let them see that I knew everything, that I'd orchestrated their downfall as completely as they'd planned mine? "Yes," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I'm ready." We walked down the plush hallway, the sounds of chaos growing louder. At the open suite door, I stopped, taking a moment to observe the scene. Nathan was arguing with an agent, his voice rising in panic. Vanessa sat on the sofa, mascara streaming down her face, staring at nothing. And then Nathan saw me. I watched the realization crash over him like a wave, understanding that I was here, that I knew, that I'd been part of this all along. His face went from confusion to comprehension to something like fear. "Maya," his voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" I stepped into the suite, Agent Morrison beside me, and met his eyes across the room. "Watching," I said simply. "The way you made me watch you destroy my life. The way you were going to make me watch my career crumble while you escaped. I'm just returning the favor." Vanessa's head snapped up, her tear-stained face contorting with rage. "You bitch! You set us up!" "No," I corrected calmly. "You set yourselves up. I just documented it." Nathan tried to move toward me, but the agent holding him tightened his grip. "Maya, please. This isn't what it looks like. I can explain." "Explain what, Nathan? How you helped Vanessa steal $4.7 million from our clients. How you created shell companies to hide the money. How you planned to frame me for your crimes while you ran off to Bali." I took a step closer, my voice dropping. "Or maybe you'd like to explain that proposal I just watched. The one where you used money from our joint account to buy her a ring?" His mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. "Agent Chen." I turned to where he stood supervising the arrest. "I believe I've fulfilled my part of our agreement. I'd like to leave now." "Of course, Ms. Reeves. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll be in touch about the trial." As I turned to go, Vanessa's voice rang out, sharp with venom. "You think you've won? You think you're better than us? You're nothing, Maya. Nothing without me. That company was as much mine as yours." I paused at the door, looking back at her. "The difference, Vanessa, is that I built that company. You just robbed it. There's a distinction." "Screw you!" she screamed as agents led her toward the door. "I hope you choke on your righteousness. I hope—" The rest of her words were cut off as they escorted her into the hallway. Nathan followed minutes later, his face a mask of shock and betrayal, as if he were the victim in all this. Our eyes met one last time as he passed me in the doorway. "I really did love you," he said quietly. "In the beginning." "I know," I replied. "That's what made this so easy." Then he was gone, and I was left standing in the doorway of the presidential suite, surrounded by FBI agents and the debris of 2 destroyed lives, lives that had tried to destroy mine first. Agent Morrison appeared at my elbow. "We should go. There'll be media arriving soon." I nodded, taking one last look at the suite. The champagne still sat on the table, bubbles slowly dying in the crystal flutes. The white roses Nathan had brought lay scattered across the floor, crushed underfoot during the arrest. The engagement ring box sat open on the coffee table, empty now that evidence teams had bagged and tagged its contents. This was supposed to be their night of celebration, the beginning of their future together. Instead, it had become the end of everything they'd schemed for, and I had made sure I was here to see it. As we rode the elevator down, Agent Morrison spoke quietly. "You did a brave thing, Ms. Reeves. Not many people would have had the strength to see that through." "It wasn't about strength," I replied, watching the floor numbers descend. "It was about making sure they understood that betrayal has consequences, that stealing someone's life has a cost." The elevator doors opened onto the lobby, where I could already see news vans pulling up outside. Agent Morrison guided me toward a side exit, protecting me from the media frenzy that was about to unfold. But before we left, I turned back one last time, looking up at the towering height of the Grandview Hotel. Somewhere up there, in that presidential suite, the carefully constructed fantasy of Nathan and Vanessa's future was being systematically dismantled by federal agents. And somewhere down here, in the aftermath of their arrest, a new version of Maya Reeves was being born, harder, wiser, and utterly without mercy for those who would try to destroy her again. The game was far from over. The trial would be long and brutal. There would be depositions, testimonies, and public humiliation for all involved. But tonight, standing in the cool evening air outside the Grandview Hotel, listening to the sirens and watching the chaos unfold, I allowed myself a moment of cold satisfaction. I had made them watch their world end, just as they had planned to make me watch mine. The morning after the arrest, I woke to find my phone flooded with messages. News of the FBI raid had spread faster than I'd anticipated, and suddenly everyone wanted answers. I ignored them all except one, a text from my father. "Proud of you, sweetheart. Come for breakfast?" An hour later, I sat across from him at his kitchen table, the same table where I'd learned about wire fraud statutes over Saturday morning pancakes as a teenager. "Marcus called me," Dad said, pouring coffee. "Said you held up remarkably well last night." "I watched the man I was going to marry propose to my business partner," I replied, staring into my cup, "while they discussed destroying my life. I don't know if remarkably well is the phrase I'd use." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You did what needed to be done. That takes strength most people don't have. Or maybe it just takes being angry enough," I said quietly. The full weight of what I'd set in motion was beginning to settle on me. Nathan and Vanessa had been denied bail. Flight risk, the judge had ruled, given the offshore accounts and detailed escape plans found in their communications. They were sitting in federal detention, waiting for a trial that would destroy what remained of their reputations. And I was the star witness who would put them there. The media is going to be brutal, Dad warned. They'll paint you as either a victim or a vindictive ex. Probably both. Let them, I said. I documented everything. The truth speaks for itself. But the truth, I was learning, was a complicated thing. By the time I arrived at Meridian Financial that afternoon, a small crowd of reporters had gathered outside the building. Agent Morrison met me at a side entrance, guiding me through the chaos. Ms. Reeves, is it true your fiancé was helping embezzle from your clients? Maya, did you know about the affair before the arrest? Are you concerned you'll face charges yourself? That last question made me stop. Agent Morrison tugged at my arm, but I turned to face the reporter who'd asked it. I am the one who uncovered the fraud, I said clearly. I am the one who brought it to the FBI, and I am the one who will ensure every stolen dollar is returned to its rightful owners. No further questions. Inside the office, the atmosphere was tense. My staff, our staff, I had to remind myself, looked shell-shocked. Half of them had worked directly under Vanessa. They'd trusted her, learned from her, built their careers under her guidance. Now they were wondering if they'd been complicit in her crimes. Conference room, I announced to everyone. Now. 20 minutes later, I stood before my assembled team, looking at faces that ranged from confused to terrified to angry. Sarah Kim, our senior analyst, spoke first. Is it true? All of it? The embezzlement, the shell companies, everything? Yes, I said simply. Vanessa systematically stole from our clients over a 2-year period, with assistance from Nathan Pierce. The FBI has recovered most of the funds, and we're working to return every cent to the affected parties. What does this mean for the firm? Marcus Chen, our junior partner, asked, Are we liable? The FBI has cleared Meridian Financial of institutional wrongdoing. This was the action of one partner, not a systemic failure. However, I paused, meeting each person's eyes. We will be conducting a complete audit of every account, every transaction, every decision made in the last 3 years. If any of you have concerns or knowledge of irregularities, now is the time to come forward. Silence. Then Sarah raised her hand. The Henderson restructuring. I reviewed Vanessa's proposal last week. Something felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint what. I should have said something. What felt off? I asked gently. The fee structure. It was buried in complex language, but essentially we would have been paid 3 times our normal rate for a standard service. When I asked Vanessa about it, she said you'd approved the pricing as a premium for the IPO timeline. I hadn't approved anything. This was the final theft, the big score they'd planned before disappearing. Thank you for telling me, I said. This is exactly the kind of information we need. No one will be punished for coming forward. The only crime here was silence in the face of clear wrongdoing. Over the next hour, 3 more employees shared similar concerns. Small inconsistencies they'd noticed, but dismissed or been talked out of pursuing. Each revelation added another layer to the case against Vanessa and Nathan. By the time the meeting ended, I had 6 new leads for the FBI and a clearer picture of just how completely Vanessa had corrupted our firm's culture. The following weeks blurred together in a haze of depositions, legal meetings, and damage control. The media coverage was relentless. Some portrayed me as a hero who'd taken down white-collar criminals. Others suggested I'd been complicit or, at minimum, negligently blind to what was happening under my nose. The worst were the think pieces questioning why I'd chosen to humiliate Nathan so publicly. Could she not have handled this privately? One columnist asked. Did she need to make a spectacle of their arrest? I didn't bother responding. Let them think what they wanted. They hadn't watched the man they loved discuss their destruction like it was a business transaction. 3 weeks after the arrest, I received an unexpected visitor. Agent Chen called ahead, warning me that Nathan's mother wanted to meet. Patricia Pierce was everything her son had inherited his charm from, elegant, composed, and carrying herself with the confidence of old money. She sat across from me in my office, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Thank you for seeing me," she began. "I know you have no obligation to. Why are you here, Mrs. Pierce?" She took a breath. "To apologize. For my son. For what he did to you, to your business, to those clients, and to ask you a question." I waited. "Did you ever love him? Or was he always just part of your investigation?" The question caught me off guard. I'd expected anger, perhaps accusations, not this quiet plea for understanding. "I loved him," I said finally. "For 3 years, I loved him completely. I believed we were building a life together. That love died the moment I heard him laugh about using me." Patricia's eyes glistened. "He wasn't always like this. When he was younger, he was kind, honest. But somewhere along the way, he learned to see people as opportunities rather than humans. Mrs. Pierce, I appreciate your apology, but your son is an adult who made calculated decisions to commit multiple felonies. His childhood isn't on trial." "I know." She stood, preparing to leave. "I just wanted you to know that I understand why you did what you did. If someone had destroyed my life's work while planning to frame me for their crimes, I would have done the same. Perhaps worse." After she left, I sat alone in my office for a long time, thinking about her question. Had I loved Nathan? Yes. Did I still? No. The man I'd loved had never existed. I'd been in love with a performance, a carefully constructed facade designed to give him access to my life, my business, and my trust. The real Nathan Pierce was the one who'd knelt before Vanessa with my money in his pocket and my destruction on his lips. The preliminary hearings began in October. I sat through hours of testimony, watching as federal prosecutors built their case with the evidence I'd helped gather. The defense attorneys tried everything, suggesting I'd been jealous and vindictive, that I'd fabricated evidence, that Nathan and Vanessa were merely having an affair, and I'd trumped up charges to punish them. Then the prosecution played the audio from the presidential suite. The courtroom fell silent as Nathan's voice filled the space. To Maya, for being so wonderfully, predictably naive. I watched the jury's faces change as they heard Vanessa describe how I would be left holding the bag while they escaped to Bali. Saw their expressions harden as Nathan discussed my impending destruction with casual indifference. The defense had no response to their own words. During a recess, I saw Vanessa in the hallway, flanked by her lawyers. Our eyes met across the crowded corridor, and for a moment, I saw not the confident woman who'd stolen from me, but something smaller, something defeated. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. Her lawyer noticed and pulled her away, but I'd read her lips clearly enough. "I'm sorry." Too late, I thought. Years too late. The trial itself lasted 6 weeks. I testified for 2 full days, walking the jury through the discovery of the fraud, the investigation, and the decision to work with the FBI. The defense attorney tried to shake me on cross-examination, suggesting I'd enjoyed orchestrating Nathan's public humiliation. "Did you enjoy watching your fiancé arrested?" he asked, his tone accusatory. I met his eyes steadily. I took no joy in it, but I took satisfaction in knowing that two people who planned to destroy innocent clients, who planned to frame me for their crimes, would face justice. If that makes me vindictive in your eyes, so be it. The jury seemed to appreciate my honesty. In the end, the evidence was overwhelming. Forensic accountants traced every dollar. Digital forensics recovered deleted emails and messages. The audio and video from the presidential suite provided motive and intent. Nathan and Vanessa's own words convicted them more thoroughly than any testimony could. The verdict came on a gray November afternoon, guilty on all counts. I wasn't in the courtroom when it was read. I'd said my piece, given my testimony, and faced my betrayers. I didn't need to watch them receive their sentences to find closure. Instead, I was at Meridian Financial, working with our clients to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. The Henderson IPO had been postponed but not canceled. Other clients had stayed with us, appreciating our transparency and cooperation with investigators. We would survive this. I would survive this. Agent Chen called with the news. Nathan got 12 years. Vanessa got 15. She was the primary architect and showed less remorse. "Thank you for letting me know," I said. "How are you doing, Maya?" "Really?" I looked around my office, at the company I'd built and nearly lost, at the city skyline beyond my windows, at the future that was still mine to shape. "I'm doing better than they are," I said simply. The weeks after the trial brought unexpected revelations. Nathan's assets were seized to pay restitution, including the engagement ring he'd bought Vanessa with our money. It sold at auction for $28,000, every penny going back to defrauded clients. Vanessa's family reached out through lawyers, trying to negotiate some kind of settlement. I declined. The courts had spoken. Justice had been served. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Sarah Kim knocked on my office door one December morning, looking nervous. "I need to tell you something," she said, "about Vanessa." My stomach tightened. What about her? 6 months ago, she approached me, asked if I'd be interested in a side project, offered me 20% more than my salary to help with some creative accounting for a few clients. "What did you say?" I said no. I told her it sounded illegal and that I wouldn't risk my career or yours for extra money. Sarah met my eyes. She laughed it off, said I was being too cautious. But after that, she started excluding me from major decisions. I thought she was punishing me for refusing. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I couldn't prove anything. And honestly, I was afraid. Afraid I'd misunderstood. Afraid I'd cause problems over nothing. Afraid I'd lose my job for making waves." She paused. "But I should have told you. If I had, maybe you could have stopped this sooner." I stood and walked around my desk, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Sarah, you did nothing wrong. You refused to participate in fraud, which is exactly what you should have done. What Vanessa did, what Nathan helped her do, that's on them, not you, not anyone else. But if you'd what? Told me you had a bad feeling? I would have investigated and found nothing because they were careful. They were planning this for years." I squeezed her shoulder. "Don't carry guilt that isn't yours to bear." After she left, I thought about all the near misses, all the moments when someone might have caught them if circumstances had been slightly different. But that was the nature of sophisticated fraud. It succeeded because smart people working with incomplete information made reasonable decisions that happened to be wrong. The only people responsible for the fraud were the ones who committed it. Christmas approached, bringing with it the first real peace I'd felt in months. The company was stabilizing. Client relationships were rebuilding. The media had moved on to newer scandals. I spent Christmas Eve in my apartment, no longer the penthouse I'd shared with Nathan, but a smaller place in a quieter neighborhood. I'd kept almost nothing from our shared life except a few books and the coffee maker. Everything else carried too many memories of lies. My father came over for dinner, bringing enough food for 6 people as always. "You seem better," he observed as we ate. "Lighter somehow." "I feel lighter," I admitted, like I've been carrying a weight I didn't realize was there. The weight of trusting the wrong people. The weight of believing I needed them. Nathan, Vanessa, I built my life around them. When they betrayed me, I thought I'd be destroyed. I paused, searching for words. But I wasn't. I'm still here. The company's still here. And I'm realizing I was always stronger than I gave myself credit for. Dad raised his wine glass. To strength. And to knowing your worth. We clinked glasses, and for the first time since that night at the Grandview Hotel, I felt something like hope. The new year brought new beginnings. I promoted Sarah to partner, recognizing both her abilities and her integrity. We hired 3 new analysts and implemented strict oversight protocols that would make any future fraud nearly impossible. I also started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I recognized that carrying the weight of betrayal, even when justice had been served, required processing. "Do you think about them?" my therapist asked during one session. "Nathan and Vanessa?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "I think about who I thought they were, the versions of them I loved and trusted. Those people were never real, but the feelings I had for them were. And the real versions, the ones serving federal time, I don't think about them at all." It was true. The actual Nathan and Vanessa, the criminals who'd stolen and schemed and planned my destruction, held no emotional power over me anymore. They were simply case files, cautionary tales, proof that betrayal could be survived and overcome. In March, I received a letter from Vanessa. The prison allowed inmates to send correspondence, though I had the right to refuse it. I almost did. But curiosity won out. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten on prison stationery. It began with apologies, lengthy, detailed explanations of how she'd rationalized her choices, how jealousy and greed had corrupted her values, how she'd never meant for things to go so far. The middle section tried to explain Nathan's involvement, painting him as the true mastermind, suggesting she'd been manipulated and coerced. This I knew was a lie. The evidence had shown clearly that she'd initiated the fraud long before Nathan's involvement. But it was the ending that caught my attention. "You always were better than me, Maya. Smarter, more ethical, more deserving of success. I spent years trying to prove otherwise, but all I proved was that you were right to trust yourself and wrong to trust me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I hope someday you can remember that our friendship, at least in the beginning, was real. Before I let envy poison everything good in my life, I hope you rebuild what I tried to destroy, and I hope you do it spectacularly." I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away in a drawer I rarely opened. Vanessa might have been sincere, or she might have been angling for some advantage I couldn't see. It didn't matter. Her remorse, genuine or not, didn't change what she'd done or the consequences she was facing. I had no intention of responding. Spring turned to summer, and life continued its forward momentum. Meridian Financial won 3 major new clients, all impressed by our transparency. During the crisis, the Henderson account finally completed their IPO, and they stayed with us, trusting that we'd learned from our mistakes. I started dating again, cautiously, with considerable vetting and firm boundaries. Nothing serious. I wasn't ready for serious. But it felt good to remember that not everyone was a Nathan or Vanessa. That trust, while earned slowly, could still be given. On the 1-year anniversary of the arrests, Agent Chen took me to lunch. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Having gone through all of this?" I considered the question carefully. It feels like surviving something that should have destroyed me. It feels like proof that the truth, when documented and presented properly, still matters. And it feels like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Any regrets about how it went down? About exposing them publicly? No. They needed to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't destroy people's lives without accountability. I met his eyes. But I do regret that it was necessary. I regret that 2 people I cared about turned out to be capable of such cruelty. That's a healthy perspective, he said. You'd be surprised how many people in your position become consumed by revenge, even after justice is served. I'm not interested in revenge anymore, I replied. I'm interested in building something better than what they tried to take from me. And I was doing exactly that. By the time fall arrived again, Meridian Financial had not only recovered but thrived. We'd become known as a firm with uncompromising ethics, where fraud was impossible because of our multi-layered oversight systems. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa's betrayal had ultimately made us stronger and more trustworthy than we'd been before. I thought about that sometimes, late at night in my apartment. About how the worst thing that had ever happened to me had also been a strange gift. It had shown me my own resilience. It had taught me the difference between love and performance. It had proven that I was capable of surviving betrayal and emerging stronger. Would I have chosen this path if I'd known what waited at the end? No. The pain had been real and devastating. But having walked through it, would I undo it now? Would I go back to being the naive Maya who trusted blindly and never looked beneath the surface? Never. That Maya had been kind but foolish, trusting but reckless. She'd built her life on foundations she never thought to test. The new Maya, the one forged in the fire of betrayal and reborn in the aftermath of justice, knew better. She trusted but verified. She loved, but maintained boundaries. She built, but on bedrock that couldn't be shaken by someone else's greed or deception. On a cold December evening, 2 years after the arrests, I stood in my office after everyone else had gone home. The city lights sparkled below, and I could see my reflection in the glass. A woman who'd survived the worst, betrayal imaginable, and come out the other side intact. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former business executive Vanessa Cho denied early release. I read the brief article. Vanessa had petitioned for sentence reduction based on good behavior and remorse. The judge had denied it, citing the severity of her crimes and the calculated nature of her fraud. She would serve her full 15 years. I closed the article and set down my phone, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, not even the old anger that used to surface when I thought about her betrayal. Just nothing. She was no longer part of my story. Neither was Nathan. They were footnotes in my history, reminders of what I'd overcome, but no longer characters with active roles in my life. I gathered my things and prepared to leave the office. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, and I had plans. Dinner with my father, then drinks with Sarah and the team. A life built not on romantic illusions, but on genuine friendships and professional respect. As I locked my office door, I thought about that night at the Grandview Hotel, about watching Nathan propose to Vanessa with my money in his pocket and my destruction on his lips, about the moment the FBI burst through the door and their perfect plan shattered like crystal. I'd made them watch their world end just as they'd planned to make me watch mine. But that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was standing here, 2 years later, having built something better than what they'd tried to take from me. Having proven that betrayal wasn't fatal, that justice was possible, and that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was success in the face of those who'd tried to ensure your failure. I walked out of Meridian Financial into the cold December night, leaving behind the ghosts of who I used to be and who they'd tried to make me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chapters in a story that was entirely mine to write. And unlike Nathan and Vanessa, I wouldn't waste it on schemes and betrayals and the hollow pursuit of easy money. I would build something real, something that couldn't be stolen, couldn't be faked, and couldn't be destroyed by anyone except myself. As I hailed a cab to take me home, I allowed myself one last thought about the 2 people currently serving federal time for trying to destroy my life. I hope they learned something from this. I hope they understand finally that some prices are too high to pay for greed. I hope they find redemption, though I'll never know if they do. But mostly, I hope they realize that in trying to destroy me, they only destroyed themselves. While I, the wonderfully, predictably naive Maya they'd mocked, had survived, thrived, and moved on. The cab pulled away from the curb, carrying me toward a future they'd tried to steal but never could. Because the best revenge isn't watching your enemies fall. It's rising so far above them that you forget to look down. And I had. Risen indeed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.